Now to northern New York's bitterly contested U.S. House race, which featured newly redrawn district boundaries this year. We saw lots of negative advertising, but not even a single debate that would allow voters to hear the two nominees side by side. In the end, incumbent Republican Elise Stefanik cruised to victory over challenger Matt Castelli and won a fifth term, though Clinton and Essex counties went narrowly for Castelli. Stefanik is a rising star in GOP House leadership, a close ally of former President Donald Trump. And if her party in the end secures a narrow House majority, she promises big changes, cutting spending, energy prices, and she says firing Nancy Pelosi.
We already have a package of bills when it comes to unleashing American energy independence. Speaker Pelosi refused to bring them to the floor. We will bring those bills to the floor. In addition, we've been working with our Border Patrol, with our members that represent border districts to make sure that we have solutions when it comes to securing the border. That means ending catch and release. It means continuing the appropriations for the border wall, and it means making sure the Border Patrol has the support they need. That's why it was so important for us to unveil our agenda, and it's what we won on, and we intend to deliver it and pass it in the House. Hopefully we'll win back the U.S. Senate and we can send good legislation to the president's desk. And President Biden's going to have to choose. Will he work with us, or is he going to continue down this path of embracing the far left?
Elise Stefanik on election night. So what happened across northern New York's sprawling congressional district this year? And what about that tight governor's race? Some analysis now with Ron Seib. Joining us now from Saratoga Springs, Ron Seib. He's a political analyst at Skidmore College. Welcome back to NBC5 In Depth.
It's such a privilege and pleasure to be back with you, Stuart. Thank you.
Well, great to have you. So you were watching with the rest of us on Tuesday night, and in the 21st Congressional District of New York, where we had a pretty nasty campaign, again, between Elise Stefanik and her Democratic rival. Pretty lopsided result. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I'm not terribly surprised. If you look at after redistricting, the 21st district actually became more Republican. I think it moved from about plus 18 partisan tilt to about plus 23 partisan tilt in the Republicans' favor. So, as we say, the fundamentals really worked to Stefanik's favor. And when you layer on the fact that it was a fairly favorable Republican electoral environment as well, Castelli's one hope was to really have a huge surge of Democratic and independent voters in the district, and hope that the Republican base vote didn't really turn out just because of the electoral tilt, or I should say the partisan tilt of the district. Not terribly surprised. I mean, Stefanik did outrace Castelli 4-1, which money is not determinative, but it is important just in terms of kind of getting your name out there, getting your advertising up. So I don't think it was a surprising result. In fact, if you want to look again at just the fundamentals, Stefanik may have even underperformed the partisan leaning of the district.
I remember when it wasn't as red. It was more purplish. And I'm wondering, in Castelli's case, I mean, here's a guy who disavowed Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, who branded himself quite moderate in many respects. Is there just no room for anybody who's not an R? I mean, is it that reliably Republican now?
Yeah, I think that, it's not just the 21st district. I think we're, as you know, and your viewers know, we're in a highly polarized era where split ticket voting is becoming more rare. It's not completely absent, but most people, when they enter the ballot box of the polling place, are really voting more straight tickets now. So again, when we go back to the idea of what's the partisan lean, it's very difficult to get crossover votes any longer. And Castelli, I think to his credit, was trying to run a campaign, as you just sort of noted, that was, as he says, appeal to the great moderate middle. The challenge with that is that that middle is becoming smaller and smaller. And those people who are centrist are usually not, there's nothing terribly exciting about centrism. It's not really propellant to the polls to talk about centrist policies. So usually when we talk about, particularly in a midterm election, where turnout is generally historically between 40% and 48% of the electoral electorate. And there is certainly, according to many political scientists would argue, there's a theory called surge and decline. In presidential election years, you get a lot of casual voters, non-habitual voters who have different kinds of preferences, different kinds of ideologies. In a midterm election, generally you get the people who are a little bit more ideological, more partisan, more dogmatic. if you're going to run a race towards the moderate middle, it's going to be difficult to run that in a midterm election year. And as I said, again, you have to find ways to stimulate turnout.
I thought it was notable, though, that the established Republican congresswoman, didn't have a press conference, didn't,
Right.
refuse to debate,
Yeah.
called her opponent lots of names, which, is
Yeah.
something that she likes to do,
Yeah.
and was rewarded for it.
Yeah, and I think that we're seeing more and more of this. And I don't want to, again, be too critical of the Republican Party, but when you talk about debating in particular, fewer and fewer debates have been occurring across the country. And
That
it's usually
is
the
true this
Republicans who do not want to debate. I think the conventional wisdom is that they don't trust the media. They don't trust the media to be balanced and fair and moderating the debates. But I think also they're just, this factor that if you have a large lead and you're in a Republican district, you only see downsides to debating, to
Yeah.
engaging with your opponent, right? You're giving them airtime and a platform that they're only going to use to their advantage.
Does Elise Stefanik become a challenger to Kevin McCarthy now? Does her star rise further in the next Congress?
That's a really interesting question. It's a little bit imponderable. We don't know. But I thought one of the things that I hadn't noticed before was during her victory speech last night, her sign on the podium said Chairwoman Elise Stefanik. Rarely see that in American politics when somebody is really promoting or advertising their position in the House leadership. There was a time when members of the House leadership on both sides of the aisle would try to cloak that or try to divert attention from that position because it was seen as not being, you're in a position where you're not really paying attention to your district and your constituents. You're focusing on a higher level. You have other aspirations. Stefanik clearly sees that as a plus, which tells me that she's thinking more about how she's going to, as you said, maybe rise within the leadership structure, maybe even position herself for a vice presidential nod on Donald Trump's ticket. I don't know if she's going to challenge Kevin McCarthy. That's always those sort of internecine struggles or battles are always pretty nasty. And usually the challenger ends up the loser in those. Usually rallies around the presumptive speaker in this case. So I think she might be content to be Chairwoman Stefanik and really in that position sharpen and hone the Republican message. And I think, but she certainly has higher aspirations. I mean, that was definitely a signal to me that she has higher aspirations.
It was, in the end, a good night for Governor Hochul, who won election in her own right against a very spirited challenge from Lee Zeldin. Now, it was not with the help of Northern New York, certainly, but what was your takeaway there? Vindication for Hochul?
Yeah, I think in some way it was vindication. I also say I think that when go back to early October when Hochul seemed to have about a 14 to 16 point lead in the polls. I thought at that time she really wasn't running a campaign. I wouldn't even say a traditional campaign. She wasn't holding events. She was reluctant to debate. She didn't have many ads on the air. She was running more of a Rose Garden campaign. I'm just going to govern, and that will be enough to win. I think when the polls narrowed, that actually was a great service to the citizens and voters from New York because Kathy Hochul needed to come out and actually engage with voters. And again, I think abortion access is clearly an important issue for many New Yorkers. According to the polls I saw, 18 to 20% of likely voters were saying that was the most important issue for them. And certainly that was an issue that Hochul foregrounded, played to her advantage, but she had to start engaging with inflation and crime and those other issues that really were salient to the New York electorate. So I think in some ways we actually got a campaign in the end. And I think Hochul was able to withstand that narrowing of her lead by actually going out and I think performing very well in the debate with Lee Zeldin. I think Lee Zeldin came out and threw, as they say, a lot of haymakers at her. She was very, very, I think, pugnacious. She tried to be above the fray a bit, and I think she was effective in that. So I think all those things can be, in some ways, pointed to as the reason why she was able to pull this out by not a large margin, but certainly a safe margin. I think 5 or 6 points is usually seem to be safe. So I think in some ways it's a vindication for her, but I also think it is again more evidence that actually campaigns matter. You can't just win on the basis of your credentials, your resume, your statesman-like demeanor. You have to go out there and actually solicit people's votes.
Ron Seib, political analyst at Skidmore College. Thanks again for being with us. Look forward to talking again.
I look forward to it too, Stuart. Always a pleasure.